Here we go. Duh, man, all this crapola. Oh no, how did that? Why is it going? It's not supposed to keep going. All right. The crapola. That's right. This one, instead of the normal Sep Rock beats, we've got Old Man Sour on the beats tonight. Link in the description. What is up? Thank you for joining. We've got one person on so far live with us out of the billions of people on this planet. So very special. Send the link out to all sorts of folks so we can get into this discussion, because it is the Wreckoning. I know it's spelled wrong. As far as the actual word reckoning, it is the Wreckoning with a W, but reckoning, let's look up. I mean, it's sort of cliche. Look up the dictionary definition of reckoning, blah, blah, blah. But, you know, like, we might not know the actual definition. You know, like, okay, so without looking at the actual definition, so I'll just be honest with you, I didn't actually look. I typed it in. I know there's a result. My subconscious might have got a look. I don't know, maybe. Hold on. I gotta get one of those lapel mics. Hey, if you want to help me get a lapel mic, that would be awesome. You know how I get fidgety. Because the setup I have is not good. It's not good. All right, so anyway. What was I even talking about now? Reckoning. Like, okay, so I always feel like reckoning is when you're sort of forced to engage with something, I guess, either by thought or by action or consequence. You know, so I guess, I don't know, let's see what do they have to say. I want to try to, hold on, I want to capture the window. But it's not doing what I want it to do. All right, stand by. Okay. This may work. Hold on. Let me bring up the Okay, so reckoning, a dictionary type definition. Let me try to narrow this down for folks. So someday when I'm editing these videos, I'll edit this part out. But until then, gather some folks and get into the talking about a reckoning. And it just sounds ominous, doesn't it? Reckoning. Um, I think it sounds ominous. So I'm sure people want to talk about it. All right, let's see. What is. All right. I'm trying to see if you guys are seeing the right thing. Hopefully you're seeing. I think there's. I don't know what this is on the right hand. Oh wait, no, I don't. Hold on. Honestly, I can't. I have such the setup that I have. I can't really. I'm flying by the seat of my pants here. Hopefully, I'm getting. There's a show called The Reckoning or a drama. I guess anyway. If you're listening to this on the MP3, hopefully it's all been edited out. But the reckoning, or excuse me, reckoning, the action or process of calculating or estimating. Okay, so if you reckon something, like you're sort of taking this guess at something, right? A person's view, opinion, or judgment. A bill, account, or its settlement. So it could be a few different things. So I'm glad we went over that because it could mean a few things. And I think one of the big problems that we have right now, talking about things, because I think a lot of people can agree with me that we are having problems with discussing things. Stand by while I get. Oh God, no, that's not what I wanted to do. Oh man, this isn't working. All right, so let me do this. This is ridiculous. Bam. Hopefully, I don't even know. Someday I'm gonna have an editor. That's not what I wanted to do. Oh my god. This is. I don't know, guys. Someday I'm gonna have a live producer or something like that. I'm gonna have enough money to either pay somebody or someone's gonna believe in the show enough to where they're like, you know what, I want to be part of the team. And I'm like, yes, because I don't know how to do this stuff. All right, because there's a lot of coordination, and you know what, I appreciate those guys. And if you are watching live YouTube shows and they've got like people doing transitions, and some people can do it all, they're very skilled people. I wish I was as skilled as them to be able to do those kinds of things. But anyway, I wanted to share the screen. It didn't really work out the way I wanted, but whatever, because it ended up in the infinity screen. Man, I hate infinity screens because that means messed up. All right. All right. So the reckoning. Why? What is that? So in this case, I guess it's the settlement of an account. In this context, right? What is the reckoning, and what is that account settlement? And this is the big controversial thing. It's different people are claiming different things, and I think that's what's sort of sussing out right now. So you have the racial reckoning. There's an economic reckoning, a environmental reckoning. I think it all ties back into it, the hub of it ties into ultimately a spiritual reckoning, and I don't mean religious per se, like in like a god that has like anthropomorphic type features, or like not like that. Not like that kind of spiritual. Like a philosophical, like kind of spiritual. Like, there's a whole a camp of people who believe selfishness is a virtue, right? Ayn Rand wrote a book called Selfishness is a Virtue, or The Virtue of Selfishness. And there's people that are that live by that credo. And so I think some folks would also would be the antithesis of that, or the opposite of that thought, that they would be almost more selfless, in fact, than to be selfish. You know, so I don't know. I guess that we like to say out loud that we're one way. I think, but in like close quarters, we sort of recognize this reality. It's like the notion that the bank CEO is foreclosing on a bunch of houses to settle the books, and him and his family, or she and her family, or whatever, are gallivanting around doing fun things with other folks who are making money, and there's tremendous pain that's happening. But on the other hand, there's an isolation or an alienation from that pain that justifies their existence and their pleasure from his or her shrewd calculations of reckoning the balance sheet, right? So the immediate reckoning of the balance sheet is now looking at, we're looking at now the sort of post echo, I guess, of the reckoning of the externalities that weren't factored into the balance sheet, right? So I mean that's getting sort of metaphorical, but let's look at real life examples. Okay, so we see this CEO or whoever, I don't know, this bank executive who is foreclosing on these houses or selling off the loans to then be foreclosed, and then I mean whoever at some point down the chain, when they're selling the mortgages off, or at some point when the houses get foreclosed on and people get kicked out of their houses and stuff like that, I guess the reckoning would be the ensuing homelessness, and then also, there's probably a further cascade that starts happening. And then also, as they foreclose, they flood the foreclosure real estate market for foreclosed houses. So the basically efficient markets theory, for the most part, would kick in and say, well, if everybody knows that there's a high supply of houses, then and there's a ton of foreclosure listings just dumped out onto the market, and it's a buyer's market, prices are going to start dropping if they want to settle cash on their balance sheet. So anyway, it's just a cascade that starts happening, and as that starts happening, it will eventually affect this family. And I mean, there's going to be a point where homelessness is so rampant, or crime becomes so rampant, or some other thing. I mean, who knows? I don't know. A revolution happens. I don't know. What if some like a crazy communist revolution? I mean, look, I'm practically militant socialist almost. Talking about, basically, if you want to put it in academic terms, I'm a big proponent of market socialism, which is you guarantee a equity path or ownership path for workers over time. So if you partner up with someone who labors with you, works in your company for some period of time, I don't know, let's talk about how long, 3 years, 5 years. Let's I don't know, let's talk to economists and different people who can spin some kind of spin and listen to their hogwash, and see if anything decent comes out of all that. And whatever it is, it's just based on this idea that if somebody works with you for a period of time, they obviously have helped build this enterprise or this thing that you've put together, and helped it get to the next level. So in that, they should somehow be detached from the rest of the job market, just like the owner, quote unquote, owner or founder, detach themselves from the market by hiring some, basically hiring or partnering. That's the big thing. We totally understand this idea of someone gave me some money, so I'm going to give them in trade. I'm going to give them a piece of my company, and I'm going to take that money and build my company, and that's totally acceptable and normal. But someone can give a big chunk of their life in a bunch of time, and help bring about major growth, etc., and multiply that owner as far as capacity, and they are paid market rate, and the market is captive. There's no way to say, hey, screw it, I don't want to do this anymore. Other than maybe you can save up money to buy a resource and then try to start your own enterprise, which is great for some people, but not everybody's cut out to do that stuff. It's a skill set in of itself to be able to do that. What if someone's not really good at being an entrepreneur, but they're really good at robbing your house and taking your shit, like raiding your house, taking your shit, tying up your family and giving it to their psychotic friends? That'll help them. That will help that crazy person, or we would call them crazy. I mean, otherwise they would be known as pioneers, or settlers, or I don't know, colonialists, or founders, or whatever. I don't know. I mean, it gets sort of controversial if you start talking about it too real. You know what I mean? But like, yeah, there was a time when the world. I mean, that's when things when the country was founded and land was established as belonging to one other person or another. It may or may not have happened by treaty. It may or may not have happened by gunpoint. It may or may not have happened by hook or crook, or who knows how it got there. And my point is, at some point, we chose to still validate a level of ownership, even though some of those vectors were ill-gotten, right? And so the thing is, we have this system that says, well, if you're not good at playing this game that we decided everyone has to play, it's like not everybody likes to play Monopoly, right? And it's almost like, well, shit, if you don't know how to play Monopoly and you're not good at it, well, fuck off and die. Like, literally, because it's like, in a way, everyone's been playing Monopoly, and then here you are, you're dealt maybe some money, hopefully, maybe your family has some money, or you get a good job right off the bat, or I don't know, like that would be great, or you got some inheritance, maybe that means you have a spot on the board. But right now, I mean, for a lot of people, they're trying to get up in the game. They barely have any money. Technically, the money they got's on loan, right? And all they're doing is paying rent to other people on the board and hoping that someone sells some shit off the board for cheap enough for them to jump in and own some shit on the board. But then, who knows? I mean, then they got to pay taxes, and then they have a potentially precarious employee relationship, right? Or they're running their own business, and then who knows? COVID hits, and then now you don't have income. There's a lot of things going on. So there are a lot of flaws in the system that would be mitigated to a large degree if we move to a system that I'm talking about, where we haven't had the reckoning, right? We've had stopgaps. We've had the labor movement that boosted unions, but we never changed the social contract. We decided, I've used this term before, or this phrasing, that we've decided that we shouldn't own each other anymore, but we haven't decided that we shouldn't rent each other anymore. So it's totally fine to rent each other by the hour, basically, or by the year, or whatever your salary arrangement is, etc. And we're basically renting each other out. It's like go to the do-it-yourself store, rent yourself a human. I mean, AKA go to the staffing agency Rent yourself a human for some amount of money, and there you go. Make sure you're designing a job that you can find the most amount of cheap humans. Or excuse me, it doesn't even have to be cheap. It's just the largest amount of humans that can do that particular type, or make your task a task that the most um what's it called, that the highest number of people can do with the least amount of investment. That way anyone can do it. And then, voila, you've broken it down to, and if it's something like complex, you can break it down into a very small task. That way, there's a few different things that go into that. Number one, your employee can do a lot of them very quickly. Number two, your employee now does not have the knowledge to create the entirety of whatever it is you're doing. They only know how to do this one thing. Number three, you don't need much training or resources to teach them this simple task. Number four, something you don't have to care about, but something that you might want to care about as a society as a whole, if you don't want to have a reckoning later, like you don't want to have an externality, like you now have a population who spends their time doing these singular tasks that don't have relevance to anything outside the specific role within a specific product that they don't know how to replicate, right? So that means when that thing goes defunct, they not only, number one, can't create their own because they don't know enough about how to create the whole of whatever it is. They only know this one little piece. And the other thing is, now if that thing that you're making becomes obsolete, they also become that knowledge becomes obsolete, right? And so there's no fallback plan built in to that kind of thing. At least if you knew how to, like if you were making chairs, and all you knew how to do was make these legs, I guess these sticks out of raw wood, and all you knew how to do was make sticks, make the legs, but you didn't know how to assemble the entire chair. Eventually, if there was a machine or something like that started assembling chairs or took your job, it's not like you could necessarily go and start your own chair making company, because you would only know how to make the legs. I guess you could make a leg making company if it was economically viable, but since you probably had your job automated, it probably isn't economically viable to start with such low economies of scale. You see what I mean? So there's another contradiction of capitalism, where pull yourself up by your bootstraps becomes a myth, because you are now competing with people who have been in the market for a while, that have a large market share already. You probably don't already know how to do whatever it is that you want to embark on how to do, because either, number one, you have an anti-compete or non-compete agreement for that, not to replicate that type of business in that area, or you don't know enough about it because you only did one small piece, or you only have this one small transferable chunk of skill, like customer service, right? You know how to speak in a customer service sounding tone, or with the language of customer service or something like that. Even then, the linguistics therein is there. It's sort of weird, you know. Superfan Chris is on. Yo, what is up, sir? What is up? Thanks for joining. Looks like, for as far as live goes, it's you and me. I did try to share this around on Facebook, but I don't know if people aren't clicking or whatever. Must be something going on a Tuesday night during pandemic. I don't know. Don't know. But Economic. I mean, I think there's there's a lot of talk about race going on. Um, I personally think a lot of that can be distilled down to economic issues now. I think that there's a lot of racism still out there, but I think that anti-racism become a prevailing narrative, right? I think that now being a racist is a lot less acceptable than back in the day, like in the 70s, 80s. Um, and now there may be racists out there that are coming out of the woodwork supporting each other, but I think the culture as a whole will shun them in general. And that goes for all races. You know what I mean? If it like I don't even think honestly, I think if you were to talk to most black people, and here I am trying to talk about like black people as a monolith, and I'm not. I'm just saying that just go talk to people on the street kind of thing. And damn it, I can't remember what I was going with this because I just remember today I just happened to have a conversation with a uh, fellow American, happened to be black, and he was like, "Look, this race thing really is an economic thing, and it's just something that's been concocted to get people to get riled up, so that way the rich people don't, that way the people don't realize what's really happening." I'm like, touche, I think so. I think so. And I think that a lot of, oh, I was going to say that I think that if you ask the average black person about, a black power movement or how black, like there's people out there now within the black community that want to create like sort of segregated stuff, like black cities or black this or that, and it's like, man, but then there's old black folks that I talk to that like sort of long for the community that existed within the black community during segregation. And I'm like, oh my god, there's got to be a different answer than that. It's like racism can't possibly be a like genetic factor. I don't think it is. I think kids are popped out and they're not racist. I think people are taught to be racist. It's a culture of racism. But that's a reckoning. That is a reckoning that we have to settle that account, because you have to say, yes, it's a culture of racism, and yeah, we don't want to do that anymore. And then if you're like that, you're not welcome. Go away. Right? And then that's like, once we just settle that account, settle it. Right? And if we haven't settled it, then something's going on. Or maybe we need to reevaluate what's going on. Like for instance, in 2006, supposedly Department of Homeland Security via the FBI released a study that said white supremacists are infiltrating law enforcement organizations throughout the nation. The Congress, and I believe it was the Republicans at that time, including Jeff Sessions, blocked the release of that report. So law enforcement officials weren't able to actually know about it. It was classified. It wasn't public knowledge. And so I don't even know to this day. I mean, there was a Freedom of Information Act that ended up dumping that out, and it was very redacted. There wasn't very much specific information, but it basically hinted at why are they doing it? Well, so they can learn the tactics, and so they can get within the ranks of the forces, and so that they can be actually, they can wield the power of the state to their ends, like fascist shit, because a lot of them are neo-Nazis, and the Nazis were fascists, so it all fits, what I mean. I mean, they're white supremacists, but we don't recognize white supremacy. We, or the government or whatever, don't recognize white supremacy as a threat as much as they definitely should, But for some reason, of course, well, what is the reason? because they're biased against, biased towards, in a positive way, positively biased towards the white supremacists. At the end of the day, you know. So, that's, I just think that's an unfortunate truth of the matter. All right, hold on, I'm trying to adjust this. Things got all sorts of ski wampus on this thing. Microphone. All right, so let me take a look here. Superfan Chris has some commentary here. Let me see here. So he says, what they want is something like how the Jewish community, Asian, and Indian communities operate. Not necessarily put all black people in one area, but economically transfer those dollars into the black community, therefore creating and generating wealth. Those other minority communities do it, and they are not dependent on outside dollars to get things done. So yeah, why? But why? What's your opinion, Superfan Chris, on why that is? What's preventing the black community from doing that? And I think wasn't Nipsey Hussle doing that out in California or something like that? I can't remember, but I don't know. I mean, I hear talk of that, and I feel like it could happen, but what's preventing that type of thing from happening? And I think also there is a family and tradition type culture dynamic that is in there that sort of I don't know, makes it so, like, for instance, that kids would stay living in the familial house and contribute to the the household, working, contributing to the household, helping each other go through college, those kinds of things. Not being ashamed of living at home during this time, and helping each other out. Like, you don't have parents aren't shaming their kids for being at home while they're going to college, and that's just, they're just supporting them through. I mean, in a mainly in a pretty strict way, like, hey, a lot of sacrifices happening for you to be able to go to college. You better not screw this up, and hopefully the people that end up actually taking that money to go to college realize that, and they finish their degrees and they do their thing. It doesn't mean they all are working in the field, but I mean, I've seen families push through doctors, engineers, you know what I mean, business owners, and one family member might open a restaurant or something, and all of the aunts and uncles help dump some money in to help open the thing, or they volunteer some time, or something like that. You know what I mean? And it becomes this family venture, or multiple family venture, something like that. What is it that's preventing that from happening, in your opinion? What do you think? And Superfan Chris says, when before integration, there was a different set of values in the black communities. Neighborhoods were tight-knit. Economically, things were great. Dollar got circulated over and over. Yeah, especially when really by default, by federal edict, I guess, or state level. I don't know what level. But, yeah, I mean, money almost had to stay within the black community. And I guess, let's go on. Superfan Chris goes on to say, integration happened, that dollar went... Oh, when integration happened, that dollar went into other areas and the communities that really didn't want blacks around. There was actually a campaign in the 50s, 60s called Selling to the Negro. Let me see. Is there economists. Oh no, I think maybe he's continuing on to the next. Or my live stream is not coming through very well. I'm losing my signal for some reason. Always has to happen in the middle of the broadcast. Yeah, I look. Well, let me back up. So, what do you think it was that during integration that broke down? Like, is there something that can narrow down like what broke down that what you're talking about? Why couldn't it, like, for instance, money comes into Chinatown because people from outside come into Chinatown to buy the Chinatown stuff, right? Or even like Jewish community, you go to the Jewish community to do whatever is at the Jewish community place. Or even within each other, sure. But then also that money, comes from selling or doing business with outside communities to bring money in. So what was the breakdown? What, in your opinion? I mean, I'm sure people have put together, maybe there's books and stuff like that. Maybe of the other folks that are on. Looks like we got 3 people who are tuned in on YouTube tonight. What are your thoughts? We're talking about the reckoning, economic reckoning, racial reckoning that our country's having to go through, ecological reckoning. I mean, we're still dealing with some of the stuff that Curtis Mayfield was talking about back in the 70s in Superfly, or like at least around that time. I mean, hell, if there's a hell below, we're all gonna go. I mean, and he's talking about the same things as back then. So how long have people been warning us about what's like the ills of what's happening in our society? I mean, we're still dealing with stuff that Marvin Gaye was singing about in Ecology in the 70s. Poison in the air and the water, fish full of mercury. I mean, it's still happening right now. Still right now. Marina is on. What is up, Marina? Welcome to the show. Let us know. Go ahead on the live chat, or you can Skype in. And I think the Skype is in the what's it called? In the description. Let's see. Superfan Chris says, when integration happened, the black wealthy families and upper middle left the black community and opened up businesses in those areas where the whites lived. Next thing you know. I see. So what was it that, what do you think it was? Is it, or I don't know, that drove black, high income black families to white areas? Why didn't they stay and build the communities like you see? I guess. Well, I mean, how about I wonder, Chinatown or places like that, or anything along those lines. Are people are people living in those areas, or are they still going to like those, moving into those types, I guess, quote unquote, like the rich white neighborhood, that kind of thing. Superman Chris says, it was abandoned. Whole communities are gone. Black Wall Street. Well, yes, Black Wall Street. Now that's because of white sabotage, right? So I don't discount this idea that I'm sure that there's scholars and maybe there's a book I could read about. I mean, I'm sure someone's going to talk about the welfare programs and how some of the ways that the welfare payouts worked, it like sort of de facto broke up families. and things like that, I guess. There are some aspects to that, and maybe that's what it is. I mean, maybe that's a major component. Um, there's probably multiple layers to the onion. You know what I mean? But it doesn't mean things can't change. But I think that is there a hesitance for someone to raise their hand and say, I'm going to be that change. I'm going to help my my brothers and sisters, because I'm the oldest, or maybe I'm the youngest, but I'm still going to push and pay for everybody to go to college if they want, or what. I mean, I don't know. You know what I mean? I think probably more and more it's probably happening all over. The more affluent black communities become, there's probably more and more of that happening. Um, but I don't doubt that there's a high need for more of it to happen, and definitely a need for neglected communities that exist still, because of redlining, because of other racial practices, racist practices that happened in the past, that have repercussions now, that are reckoning now. Um, those communities have to be invested in, right? There have to be programs to help people that want to be helped, that people who want a good job, that they can get a good job, people who want good shelter, decent shelter, can get it, and function in society. People just want to be able to live a life and do the American dream and da da da. For some reason, people are so alienated from each other. I almost feel like people don't remember that we are very much alike. It doesn't matter where we come from. You can come from a completely different country. You probably just want to chill at home and do your shit and not get fucked with. I mean, like, life is good until it's interrupted by bullshit, right? And people just don't want the bullshit at the end of the day. So, one thing that I'm sort of coming, like, one of these sort of, I guess, reckonings or realizations I have is looking at my own life, and what I'm doing or saying is like, what I'm doing or saying, is that causing bullshit for someone else's life? Is that causing bullshit in someone else's life, or preventing bullshit in someone else's life? If it's causing bullshit in someone else's life, there should be a good reason for it, I think. Like, justify it. Like, I can't really think of it, but I'm just saying, like, justify it. Anyway, let's see. Marina. Oh yes, she says she's catching up. Yes, take your time. Take your time. I just ramble on. So welcome to the show. We're just talking about how society will have to reckon with many things, especially American society. I talking to Miro, my friend from Bosnia, also grew up in Germany. He's a very global, has a global perspective. And from the places, I mean, he's been through war, he's been through genocide, and he says over and over again, he talks about how brutal American society is. I mean, imagine, this guy's been through war. He's been through shit that most people can't even imagine in their mind. And he talks about how brutal it is. Yeah, something to think about. All right. Interesting perspective. Superfan Chris says, what drove them there was this fable idea that there must be something better out there than what was in the black community, no doubt. Even that, excuse me, even that propaganda has its reckoning that we're seeing, right? I think that in these bastions, right, where do you see massive drug addictions, especially opioid addictions, or other types of addictions? It could be material addiction, spending addictions, other types of addictions. Who knows? I don't know. that just other neuroses that plague folks who seem to have it all in the exact right place. You know, they're in the right neighborhood. They're in all of these things, and they're here killing themselves and whatever. I mean, there's all sorts of crazy shit going on in these people. So, yes, propaganda, but it all comes back because the propaganda, almost by default, is false, right? Otherwise, it wouldn't have to be propaganda. It wouldn't have to be a manipulation game. It could just be the truth, but the truth hurts too much, I guess, right? Or something. I don't know. All right, so yes, missed comments up top. Okay, so which? All right, hold on. Other areas, yes. I think I got. Which one am I missing? Oh, yes. Lower. Okay, here we go. Wait, hold on. I know I missed the comments after. I missed the. Which comments did I miss? All right. Let me know which ones I missed. Excuse me. Superfan Chris goes on to say, lower class working black families could not afford houses over there. There wasn't enough dollars coming back into the community. Fast forward 60, 70 years, and that is why community looks okay, yes. All right, so there we go. I was just talking to someone this morning about the wealthiest black neighborhood in Jacksonville called Sugar Hill. Oh, that's cool. There's a few houses left, but the whole area is where the Shands UF Hospital is now. Interesting. When integration happened, those folks moved away and crossed the bridge to Arlington, left the neighborhood behind, and there was no leadership around to stop the bulldozers. Interesting. But why? Why not just build that place? You already have that establishment. Why not? You know, and now it's, I mean, obviously the land is valuable land, you know. And I don't know. So it's maybe the propaganda, you know. But again, it all comes back to the reckoning. We are having to deal with the realities of that the propaganda obscured, you know. So I don't know. What's going to end up happening after the reckoning is the big question. Is the big, you know, as we reckon our way through the account and balance the account back out. What's going to happen? I don't know. I think that there's a way that we could make some major changes happen legislatively, and what do you call it? Collectively through government programs in theory. But I think that the system is so rotten and corrupted beyond, like, I mean, it is like, it's like the either third world countries or whatever country you think is the most corrupt, like backwards country, like it's probably foreign or something, like, right? That's the stereotype. And that's our country, you know. The US is like the most corrupt. I mean, anybody can be bought, right? Anything, anyone, you name it, it can be bought in this country, in America. And almost anything is for sale in America. So, I mean, it's like that in other parts of the world too, and even more brutal in some stuff. I mean, I'm sure China's probably got some brutality that's even worse than here, or other parts of the world are even more brutal than here. But it is brutal. There's a level of brutality that is that it has to be recognized. We have to reckon with it. I mean, there's people that believe, like, look, if you can't afford healthcare and you can't afford to keep yourself alive, well, hey, that's evolution, yo. And I don't know that that necessarily goes along with human nature per evolution, but it is what they believe. This group of people, that's what they believe um, is fine. So, and through their ideology, right? So, it's not necessarily best for society, but whatever. It works for them for now, so that doesn't really matter. It doesn't matter. What doesn't affect them now doesn't really matter in general, right? So, that's just part of it. The other reckoning that we have is now that white supremacists have been in law enforcement. Um, that's pretty nuts since before 2006. So they've had 14 years to build up. I don't know that anyone's done anything specific or public or official about white supremacists. And I would like to ask white people, by the way, especially white cops, and especially Ben Shapiro, and especially like Dave Rubin and I don't know, that schmuck that goes to colleges and says, convince me I'm wrong. God, I can't remember his name. But anyway, that guy. How does the news that white supremacists are infiltrating law enforcement affect white people versus black people? And I would like to know about whether or not, or I would like to know from them, how do you know if you're black, how do you know that the white cop you're dealing with is or is not a white supremacist per the FBI document via the Department of Homeland Security? How do you know they're not one? What's the test? Right? If there's no such, I mean, like, we have to reckon with this idea that these, like, there's some of these white people that don't understand, they don't want to listen to whole communities of people saying, hey, there's something going on, there's something wrong here, what is happening, there's something wrong here, and they're like, nah, there's nothing wrong, look away, everything's fine. And but they never have to actually answer some of these questions, like, hey, does it affect these communities of people, or not even communities, individuals, people? Does it affect individual American citizens differently that white supremacists have been allowed, at least with no official program or special injunction or something to calling out white supremacists, right? I don't know. Please tell me if something happened, because I'm pretty sure nothing happened. How does it affect non-white people versus white people, right? And so that's a big issue, right? And then plus, when we start looking at crime statistics, oh well, black people commit this, or white people commit that, or this percentage of this or that. It's like, okay, wait, where did those numbers come from? Are those FBI numbers? FBI numbers from who? Who fills out the police reports? Oh, the police? So we're going to take numbers and reports from white supremacist police that have been documented. FBI has documented that law enforcement agencies across the nation have been infiltrated by white supremacists specifically and purposefully and strategically, right? All of that. I don't know. It's crazy stuff that we haven't reckoned with it. When are we gonna balance the accounts? Because it's been racking up a lot of charges with no accountability, right? So there's a reckoning coming, or if it hasn't come, if it hasn't already come, which it hasn't come, really hasn't come, it's coming. Whatever it is, it's coming. We'll see. Or there's going to be a revolution. I mean, I think that I don't know. It might be to the point where the system is so corrupted that some small band of guerrillas is going to do some crazy stuff, and it's gonna be like, you know what, hell yeah, yeah, that's right. And then they're gonna create the good example, and then once there's a good example, other people are gonna be jumping on board, doing their own thing, blah blah blah, and then a couple different factions will start to emerge. They'll probably connect together to form one, and then next thing you know, we either got a civil war or we have a rebellion against the empire. Crazy stuff, scary either way. I mean, oh god. There's Intercept just put out a report today that there's a decent sized percent of the population that is gearing up and has been itching for civil war or some kind of national event to instigate basically some type of war scenario. And we're right in the midst of that. Right in the midst of that. And so we'll see what happens. Right now, the government is siding with those folks that want to instigate. A lot of them want a white ethno state. They want to instigate a race war. They want to just basically, take over and run the shit. They think that white people are being wiped out, that the United States conquered this land as a white nation, stuff like that. Those people exist. They are heavily armed, and they believe that their time is coming. And so as soon as a major catastrophe hits, and even bigger than now, or even like riots and things like that, could instigate something major. We'll just have to see what happens. We'll just have to see. But that's all going to be part of the reckoning, because basically they've made, JFK said something along the lines of, if you make peaceful revolution impossible, you make violent revolution inevitable. And there's a peaceful revolution that's bubbling up. I mean, Bernie tried to start a peaceful revolution, right? And his asks weren't even big. Like, compared to Bernie, I'm asking for not only what Bernie asked for, but also a new contract with labor, right? I want people to be treated as partners, not as utilities or commodities, right? That's all. I think it's a paradigm shift, cultural shift. Just like we said, we don't own people, we should also not rent people. People are partners, just like money can buy partnership, time should buy partnership. And a not stock purchase plan, because you live in a captive market. The money I'm already getting from the employer is below what they should be paying me. I'll be damned that the employee should have to buy from the wages that they're earning from a captive market, that they have to reinvest their own wages. No, they should automatically get equity or shares based on their tenure. The longer they work there, they just get gifted these shares, basically. Not gifted, they earned it for sticking with you, sticking with this enterprise, instead of leaving your ass to go help someone else build their shit, and build it better, right? With all the experience that they have accumulated thus far. Right now, we don't do that. We have a brutal society where we will extract what we can out of people. We'll fire them and hire the next batch of kids out of high school, so that they don't have to get paid raises. Or we'll hire the next batch of kids out of college, so I don't have to give you a raise. We'll get the next batch of kids, or whatever. Or we'll get a next batch of old people that are going back in the workforce because we're running out of retirement money. Boom, I don't have to pay you college grads all this money. We got a bunch of old college grads coming back in the workforce because they can't afford to retire. Boom, you don't get any money either, right? So we just have a spiral that's going to get worse and worse. And we also have paradox of thrift. Paradox of thrift is that when you aren't certain of your money situation, you become thrifty. Now, what the economy needs in order to be stimulated and actually start being successful and whatever is for people to spend money, but they're not doing that if they're being thrifty. That's the paradox of thrift. People are unsure, so they don't spend money. By not spending money, they've guaranteed that they will now face hard times because the economy is for sure going to be low. But if they were to start buying stuff, then people would have incentive. I mean, it has to be more than one person, right? It has to be like the whole market start working, getting back into it. Now there's incentive for new people to jump in and blah, blah, blah. All right. So tonight, the Wreckoning. I'll probably do a Wreckoning part 2. I don't know. Let me know if you have any comments, questions, whatever you want to talk about next week. We might have a guest next week. Ian, a.k.a. Wally Doo, might be stopping by to tell us a little bit about what's going on in his world. I think he wanted to talk specifically about what was it? Stand by. He wanted to talk about the music industry and how some of that is sort of crazy, and just like there's a degradation of music and all sorts of weird stuff. But I don't know. We'll see. Maybe it'll be music. Maybe it'll be whatever. We'll see if he comes through, etc. If you have a topic that you want to hear discussed, let's just let me know. Put it in the comments. I'm always open to discuss whatever is on your mind, societal issues, etc. But anyway, that's been another episode of The Boyd. I'm going to end it here. It's been about an hour or so. Every Tuesday the show goes on. It may be 9 o'clock, maybe 9:22 like tonight, but the show must go on. So remember, next week, 9 p.m., like, subscribe, share. Get some people jumping in and commenting, especially argumentative people that really want to put their view out there. Get them out there. If you want, even if if I believe what they believe, I'll still play devil's advocate. I'm good at that. So let's do this. But it's been another great episode. Thank you for tuning in, and I'll talk to y'alls later. Peace. All right, shit.